So this is the boot process, boot sequence of the router or switch also. So Cisco routers and switches. Now what happened when we start the router? So first thing, which is post, it happens post means power on self test, and it do what? It checks it check all the components and the interface of the router and see whether it is working or not. So if it is any hardware problem, then it will detect from here and it will stop the boot process if it is a serious problem. Now this post we can't see. This post will not show. It will show the result of post. That means all the components and the interfaces which it detects, it shows after the bootstrap. The bootstrap is the next process which runs after the post, and these things are running from ROM. So what it do here in a bootstrap, first it checks the configuration register value, that is by default is 0x2102. This is the default value of configuration register value, and it decides like from where you have to load the ISO image, the operating system of the router, and it decides that where you can load. Now it has three options, so we can configure the router to get the iOS image from the flash TFTP, or if it is not there, then it will go to ROM monitor mode. Like first it will check that whether the ISO is available on the flash. If it is yes, then it will load into the memory means RAM. Now if it is not there, so we can configure it to load it from the TFTP server, which can be our local server. So if it will check there, and if in case the image is still not there also, not even a flash, not in a TFTP server, then what it will do, the bootstrap will go on for the ROM on mode from the ROM. These are all programs. This bootstrapping is running from the ROM, and it do what? It goes into ROM monitor mode. It is a special kind of mode, and or we can say this the mini iOS also. Like what it do? It gives you the option and commands, only the command and option to load the new iOS, or to reset the, or to change the configure register value. Now in case our router is booted from the flash and we load it here, then the next step is to load the configuration, whatever the configurations we have done already. So it will load it from there, and it will load it from NVRAM will have the all boot configurations. Now like whatever the configuration we do, we configure the interfaces and the many other config, so it will happen on, it will saved in the NVRAM. Now unless if it is not saved, it will keep running on the RAM unless we save it. So all the configuration we do in the router, it remains on the RAM, and when it goes into NVRAM, when we save it, it goes into RAM. And now after loading the flash, the configurations will be saved in the NVRAM, and when they, at the time of the booting, it loads the iOS from the flash, and the next step is to load the configuration from NVRAM. Now there is two options: it can get the configuration or it will not get the configuration. Now why it will while it will get the configuration, it will load it into the RAM and start applying those configurations into your router, and then it will provide you the command line to manage your router. Now in case if it is not getting the configuration, now why it is not getting the configuration, let's say it is a fresh router, it's the first time you starting the router, you have bought it, you have not configured it, it is the first time you are starting the router. So what, you will not have any configuration, it's a default one. So what it will do, you will not see any configuration. So what you will see is the setup mode, we can say. It is a setup mode, it's a kind of mode where you can configure the basic system, and it is like it is only giving you some basic configurations option, and will not allow you to like all the configurations. So you can do configuration of some basic things there. Now these are the steps of those. So once the startup configuration is loaded, iOS will present CLI interface in user mode. So you can see your configuration router and you can configure and go on. And if it is not there, then it will go into setup mode. Now, when I say about mode, so now today we will see the modes of router. Now before that, let's see how the router boots. Now we don't have a real router here, but I said about this software. I told you about the software, that is this packet tracer. So I told you that in a packet tracer you can do configure everything. I have installed this one. Now these icons are looking, it is showing very small, so I can do create them big. I will go to option preference, and here in the font option I have the application size. It is 8 points, so let me increase it. uh, I'll go for 12 and I will apply. Okay, now you can see our application is looking very big. These options are looking good. So now what we have these routers here. If I select this, it says network devices. In the network devices we have routers, switches, hubs, wireless devices, security devices, and WAN emulation also. So I will select one router here. We can choose any of these series. So I'm going to choose one router from here. Let's say I select this one and I will put it here in this. Now as I put it here, that means it is automatically started. Now it is started, that means it is starting, and we can see the boot process and what happens in the boot process. Now remember, this is it is like a fresh router. It's a virtual router and it is like a fresh router, like I just bought it from the market. That means it's not having any configurations. Now when it is not having any configurations, that means we will see it in a setup mode, and now it is already in the setup mode, I think. So now if I want to see that, now this is important. This is, we can assume like it's a real router. Now if I want to configure the router, if you see the physical interface of the router, if I click on this router, I can see the physical view. And when I'll zoom it, now you can see what we have here is the empty slots where we can add some extra ports or interfaces, but we have some default ports connect there, the inbuilt ports. These are like these Ethernet port to connect the to connect the LAN network. We have two Ethernet ports, and then we have console port and auxiliary port. Now we don't have any other port, like we don't have a port for configuring it. We don't have a port for connecting the mouse, keyboard, or even a even a monitor to do the so I don't have any. So this is what, there is no mouse, no keyboard, no monitor option available to connect the router and configure it. Now what we have here is this console port. Remember I told you that the console port is to configure your router. It is used to configure your router. That means from here you will connect the rollover cable, or also it is called console cable. So from here you will take the console cable and you will connect it in your PC's ROM PC. नहीं करा, जरूरी है कि काम है? In these routers we don't have options to connect more keyboard or mouse or even a screen monitor. So what we do, we use this console port. Console port we use to connect the console cable, which is also called rollover cable, and then we use the cable to connect here, and the other end we will connect into the machine, our normal Windows machine or Linux machine, whatever. We connect it on the serial port, which is 9 pin connector. But nowadays we have no serial ports in our machines. So nowadays what we have, new machines which is having USB ports. They don't have serial ports. So we do what, we use the console cables now, which comes with the pre-configured, pre-attached USB port. That means in one side it is the USB port, in the other side it is the RJ45K connector, which can connect in this console port. So what we do now, I will show you here how we'll connect it. So what we will do now, I will use one machine from here. So we have these end devices also. We have PC, we have laptop, server, and other devices also available. So I will use one PC from here. And now what I will do, I will connect the console cable. So we have a console cable also available here in a connections. So when I click on connections, so we have these different type of cables available, and this one is called console cable. If you can see the sky blue color, so I click on it to select it. Then I will go to the router and click on the router. Now when I click on the router, it shows that it has all these interfaces: auxiliary port, console port, and two Ethernet ports. So I want to connect it into console port. So I select console. And now you can see the cable here. And then I will go on to click on the PC. And in the PC, we have USB ports and this RS232. Now this is actually the COM port, the serial port we have in the PC. So I will click on this so that I can connect this console cable into this port. And now you can see it is connected. Now what we'll do here, in a real machine, we go on to select the terminal. Now terminals are not available by default right now in Windows 10 machines. We have to install the software for that, or otherwise we can use putty software in our Windows. If you know that putty software, maybe I have in my machine also. Okay, I think I don't have it. So this is what the putty software, and you can download this software. It's a very small software which you can use, or maybe I have it. Let me find it. I think I have it. Let me find that putty software. So we connect the router console port, and the other end we will connect it in our machine, our PC's serial port, or even a USB port also if you have a console cable with the USB port. And then what we do, we can open this putty software in our Windows machine. Now this is there for the real machine, it is not for this virtual machine. In this real machine, if you are having a real machine, so what you do, you will open the putty software, and from here you have option. You can see here in these options you have raw connection option, we can connect telnet, rlogin, SSH, and also we can use serial. So you can click on the serial port to connect, and it will select your serial port of the machine, and the baud rate, it is the default 9600. So you do leave it as it is, and then you press OK. So what it will do, actually it will open the terminal of your router. It will open the command line terminal of your router, where you can configure your router through the commands. Remember, it is command line, and your router can only be configured by the command line. So for configuring everything in your router or even a switches, Cisco routers or switches, you have to use this command line tool. So what it do, it will open you select the serial port here in this putty, and your cable is connected to the serial port, and when you press open, it will automatically open the terminal, and that terminal of the router. Now this is for the real machine, this putty. We don't have that real router here. connected to my real machine. This is the virtual machine in a packet tracer which is connected to the virtual router. Now what I will do here, when I click on this machine here, so I will see here these options. This is a physical view of my machine, and I will go here in the desktop. So in the desktop I have IP configuration option, I have command prompt also, and I have here the terminal emulator. Now this terminal emulator is to open this serial connection. So I will click on this, and it says that's baud rate and speed and all that. Leave it as it is default, press OK, and now I can see the command of the router. This is the command prompt of my router. Which router? This router which I connect to this machine, and it is very small. In this text is very small, so I will increase the text also. I will make it full screen, but the text is still very small, so let me increase the text also. So that I will go to options here, preference also, and here I will go to the font, and this is the CLI. So CLI font is also 8, so I will increase it into 14, let's say 14, and okay, apply, close. Now again I will open the machine, go to terminal, and okay, and now I can see the text is very big, which you can see easily. Or you want to make it more, then you can increase the font size also. Now this is what we are seeing here is the router's command line terminal. And now what we are seeing here is the boot process. It is the boot process which we are seeing here. Now remember, I said first it runs the post. That means from here in the boot process it will run the post first. Now the post we don't see, we will see the boot process, bootstrapping directly. So after the post, what it do, it will run the bootstrapping, and the post we will not see when it runs. So what we see here is the bootstrap directly. If you can see, it says system bootstrap, version of the bootstrap is and this, and the copyright of Cisco, and this is what it is doing. This is the router ID 2621 processor version, this, and it is also showing the memory of the processor, and then it is going on to read and initializing from the ROM. And now what it is doing, it is finding the iOS, and it has found the iOS from the flash. By default it is always getting it from the flash, and now I said that it was the flash always it is in compressed. In a flash it kept it, and is a compressed way. So it is doing what, it is decompressing the iOS here, and then after the decompressing it is running the iOS, and it is showing the information about the iOS here. It is showing the information about the iOS. It is information, it is saying restricted rights legend about the iOS, then the company information, then it is showing you the information about Cisco Internet Network operating system software, and the software iOS is for this router, which is 2600 series router. Version of the iOS is 12.2, release software is this. Then it is showing you the information like copyright and all that. Then it is showing you that where this software is, when the software was compiled. Now it has run the post in the beginning. I told you at the beginning it will not show you, but at the after that bootstrap it show you the result of the post, and what it is showing here is the result of that post. And what it is showing here, that this is Cisco 26210 processor revision version memory. It is showing you about that. Then it is showing that the processor board ID is this. Then it is showing that M860 processor version, processor, what is the process, part number and mask number. Then what it has a bridging software. Then it has one port, this software for X20 X.25 version, this to support the X.25 connection. It's a WAN connection. Then it has two Ethernet ports, fast Ethernet port actually. Ethernet means 10 Mbps, fast Ethernet means 100 Mbps. And IEEE 802.3 standard of this interface. Then it is showing that 32 KB K bytes of non-volatile configuration memory. It is showing the size of your NVRAM. It is only 32K. Then we have this K byte of ATA compact flash. This is read write option. So our flash memory is this K. It is almost 6 MB. Now after doing this, it try to find the configuration from NVRAM. Now it tries to find the configuration because this is the fresh router, never configured. It's a out of the box router, so it does not have any configuration. So what it do here, it let me into the setup mode, and this is what the setup mode is. It asks the questions to configuration. It says that this is the center system configuration dialogues, and would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog, yes or no? Now it is not that useful. This configuration setup mode is not that useful. It is just for the basic configuration. Now even if you say yes, so you say yes, I want. Now it is saying that at any point you may enter the question mark. That means this for help. Remember, question marks is for help here in the router iOS. Now use Control C to abort the configuration dialog at any prompt. Like if you are in this dialog box, like in the setup mode, and you don't want to configure it, you just press yes, and you have configured 2 3 things, but you feel like, no, I don't want to configure it from here. So anytime you can press this Control C, and the changes which you have done will not be saved, and you will be get out from the configuration setup mode. Then it is asking now, what basic management setup configuration only enough connectivity for management of the system and extend setup will work. Ask you to configure each interface on the system. Now first it is saying, would you like to enter the basic management or not? So it's okay, let's say yes. Now it is saying enter the name for the host, that is router. By default it is router. I will say like I will say Sai Ali. Now it is saying give a secret. I say ABC. Enter enable. Now you see it is asking me the questions. Now these are, you don't know, like if you are first time opening the router, you don't know what these questions are. What is enable secret, what is enable password, and what is these things. So you should not do the configuration from here. So what, anytime you can do, press Ctrl C to exit from here, and if you have configured something, it will not be configured, it will remove those configuration. Or at the beginning, just in the first line, you just say no here if you don't want to configure it. So I will press Ctrl C, and I get out from the setup mode. Now it is saying press return to get started. Now return means enter. So it is saying press enter to start your router configurations. So I press enter, and this is what I see. So if you want to uh, not configure it from the setup mode, then you can just press no here, and then you can just go on to see this. So if you press no here directly, then it will show you directly this. It will say press enter to get started, and then you can press enter and you are now started with it. Otherwise you can configure it, you try to configure it, and if you don't understand, Control C, press Control C, exit from setup mode. And even you can start the setup mode anytime by just giving command setup. If suppose you want to start your setup mode again, then you can just press setup to start the setup mode, not here. Now it will take time. So You can start the setup, but not in this mode. Now, what are the modes we have in router? So next thing is the modes of router. Router modes. So the Cisco command line interface is divided into different command modes, and each command mode has its own set of commands available for the configurations, maintenance and monitoring of router and network operations. Now entering the question mark at the system prompt, that means router command, allows you to obtain a list of commands available for each command mode. That means there are different command modes where you can use to do different things. Let's see, configuration, maintenance or monitoring. And in any of these mode, you can press question mark to get help. Get help means you want to see what commands I can pass in this mode, or even in the command mode, like if I want to see what command I can pass, I can give after this command. So what are the options I have? So I can see that by using the question mark anytime. Now the standard order that a user would access the mode is as follows, and these are the standard order. Now remember, the order is also important here. Like first you will see the user execute mode, then the second you will see the privilege execute mode, the third you will see the global configuration mode, and there are some specific configuration modes, which is we can also say configurations sub modes. So basically we have these three basic modes, and in that third one you have some sub modes. Now remember, you can go in these modes one by one. Like you cannot go directly this global configuration mode. So whenever you enter the router, you always enter first this user execute mode, then you will go to privilege mode, and then you can go to configuration mode. So right now the first mode is what? User execute mode, and this is called user execute mode, and the user mode is the first mode a user has access to after logging into the router. So this is the mode where you get the access of your router first, and the user mode can be identified by the greater than symbol prompt following the router name. That means after the router name you will see this symbol, and when you see this symbol, that means it's a user execute mode. Now this mode allows the user to execute only the basic commands, such as those that shows the system's status. So it is just used through monitoring. That means if you want to see something, then you will use this mode to do that. Now the router cannot be configured or restarted from this mode. Remember, you cannot configure anything in this mode, not even you can restart the router. And the user mode can be identified as shown below, and this is what you can see. And if you see this, which right now we are seeing here, is the same thing which I say, and this is what the router user mode. So this is what user mode we see, and if I try to do some setup thing here, it is not allowing me. So in this we can do some monitoring task. So when I press enter to get started, first mode I see is this user mode. Now this is what the router name, it is the default name actually, and here it says that when I try to configure, it says the enter host name, the default one was the router, and I try to change it but I did not save it, so still it remains default, that is router. And after the name of the router you see this symbol, and that means we are in user mode. Now in this mode we can do some monitoring task. Now the next mode is what? The privilege mode. the privilege mode, where we can say privileged access mode. And to go to this mode, we have to give command enable in the user mode. So when we give enable command in the user mode, this is to change the mode to privilege mode. We will go into this privilege mode, and this privilege mode allows user to view the system configurations. So all the viewing of the configuration, like whatever you want to view, you will view in this privilege mode. And what you can do, you can restart the system and enter router configuration mode. That means from this mode you can do enter the next mode, which is the configuration mode, which is the global configuration mode. And from this mode you can go into, and otherwise you will not go, like from here, from directly router mode, user mode, you cannot go to the configuration mode. You have to go to the privilege mode first, and then you can go to configured mode. Now privilege mode also allows all the commands that are available in the user mode, and privilege mode can be identified by this hash symbol in a promote following the router name. That means after the router name, here when you see this symbol, it is the user mode, and here when you see this symbol like this, that means you are in privilege mode. And from the user mode, a user can change to privilege mode by running the enable command. Like in the user mode, when you run the enable command, you will change into to restrict to the you will change into what, privilege mode. Also we can keep a enable password or enable secret to restrict the access to privilege mode. Now from this mode we can go into configure mode, and we can do configure anything in the router. So we can restrict the access of this mode, like we want to restrict the access of this mode, like who can go into this mode. So we can put some password here, and we can put some password here to restrict the access of privilege mode. Now an enable secret password uses stronger encryption when it is stored in the configuration file, and it is more safe. Now I will show you what this secret password and enable secret password when I configured it. But you know that there is a password configuration here to secure the access of privilege mode, because after this mode directly you can go into configuration mode, and this you can see the privilege mode is look like this. By default there is no restriction. So if I want to go to the privilege mode, what I do here, in this user mode I will give command enable, and I will get into privilege mode. Now you can see it is showing hash. Let me increase it more. Let me increase the font a little more. Okay, so you can see when I give enable command, I will be in the privilege mode now. Now the next mode is what? Now it is not asking me any password, but we can configure the passwords for securing the mode. Now the next thing is what? Global configuration mode. Now this global configuration mode allows users to modify the running system configurations. From the privilege mode, a user can move to configuration mode by running the configuration terminal command from privilege mode. So if you want to go from privilege mode to global configuration mode, then you will run this command. Now from here you can configure everything in your router, everything, and here you don't have any password on this global configuration mode. That means there is no password here to secure your global configuration mode from privilege mode. Now to exit configuration mode, the user can enter the end command or press Ctrl Z key combination. The global configuration mode be identified like this. You can see after the router name, you will see the config in a bracket and by the hash, and that means you are in the global configuration mode. Now to the changes you made from configuration mode is permanent and affect the entire router until the next time any changes has been made from the configuration mode. So the router is running, and when you make changes here anything, it will affect your whole router. Now to change mode from privilege mode to global mode, you can just simply type the config and press enter, which will change mode to default terminal as shown below. So you can change the mode from global config the privilege to config mode by only pressing the configuration. There is two commands here actually, configure terminal, but you can also press configure, you can also type config and two time enter to go into config mode. Then to directly make changes in the startup config, you can use the configuration memory or config mem command. It will merge running config and the startup config file in RAM. Now remember, when the router is running, that means whatever you configure in it, it will configured in a RAM until you save it. When you save it, it will save it into NVRAM, and whatever saved in the NVRAM, it is called startup configuration. Why it is called startup configuration? Because when you start your router next time, it will take the configuration from NVRAM. So whatever the configuration it takes, it is called startup configuration. Now if you want to change the mode, let's change it first. So I want to go to configuration mode, global configuration mode by privilege mode. So what I will do here, I will give command configure space terminal and then enter. And now you can see I am in the global configuration mode. Now here you can see after the router name, we have config under the bracket and hash. That means I'm in the configuration mode. I'm in the global configuration mode. Now what here it is saying, enter the configuration commands here. That means we can add configuration commands here and one per line. That means one command in one line. Like you cannot run two commands in the one line. Then it is saying end with Control Z. So if you want to exit from this mode, you can press end, or you can press Control plus Z, or you can press exit also. You go back to privilege mode. If you want to exit from the privilege mode, then you will give command disable. You gave command enable to enter into this mode. You give command disable to go out of this mode. Out, you go to user mode. Now from user mode, if you want to come out, then you will give command log out. Log out means you're logging out from your router. And when you want to log in again, you can have to just press enter and you log in again. Now remember the question mark. You can press question mark anytime and you can see what commands you can run here in this mode. There are not much commands, there are very few commands because you can't do much here in this mode. So we go to enable mode. Now when I press question mark here, there is some commands and there is lots of commands here because you can do lots of things here. Now I want to go to the configuration mode, so I will give config here space. Now remember, I want to see what command I can give here. After config, what I can give? So I put question mark, space and question mark. Now if I press directly question mark, it shows only the config. Now if I press space, that means what I want to give after this configure, and press question mark. Now it says there is an option terminal. So I see the terminal command. So whether it is there or not, I will give terminal. So automatically it is what terminal is available. So I can only press configure and enter. And now when I press configure and enter, now what it is saying here, it is saying that whether you want to go to the terminal, which is the default one, or you can go for the memory here. Now if I press directly enter, it will go to terminal, and now it is gone into terminal. That means you want to configure it from the terminal. This is your terminal. If you select this memory, if you press here memory, then what it is showing here, that to directly make changes in the startup configuration. Startup configuration, that means it is your memory, it is your saved configuration. You can use the configure memory or config mem command. That means you're using what? You're using this command. You're using configure. You're not giving terminal. You're not giving terminal. You're giving configure memory. So if you give configure memory, then what it will use this, and it will use the startup configuration. And it will use the startup configuration in the RAM, and whatever the changes you will do, it will save in the running config and also in the startup config. That means it will, whatever the changes you do, it will be changed in the running router, that means in the RAM, and it will saved in the NVRAM also in a startup configuration. So next time when you start your router, you will see the changes there also. So here are some of the other options under the configuration command, and that is what these options. Like when you press configure and press question mark to get the possible commands, you will see these. Confirm means what? Confirm replacement of a running configuration with the new config file. That is what you have here. Now let me exit it from here. That means after giving config command here, when you press question mark, now it is not showing me all the other options here. It is only showing me terminal, because it is what? It is not a real router. It is only a virtual router of packet tracer. But when I press enter, it shows me other options. It shows me the other options, but it does not shows me when I press the question mark. And what these other options are? These other options are meaning this. Now why it is not showing there? Because it is a packet tracer. If you do it in the real router, you will see these options. Because I told you that this packet tracer is only it can do only commands till CCNA level. The other commands which is in the another level, which is not done, it is not available in packet tracer. So this confirm means it can do what? It is meaning like confirming the replacement of the running config with the new config file. Then memory means configure from NV memory. That means it will do the configuration from the NV RAM. That is your startup configuration. If you select network, that means configure from the TFTP network host. That is, if your machine is connected to the TFTP server, then it will configure it from there. Overwrite network, that means overwrite the NV memory, that is your NV RAM saved memory, save RAM from TFTP network host. That means it can get the configuration from TFTP server to your startup configuration. Like here it will get it in your running configuration. Then you can use replace the running config with the new config file. So it will replace the running config. But by default always we do what? We use the terminal. Now terminal means configure from your terminal. That means you want to do the configuration from your terminal. And then when you see this one, that means you can press enter. That means what? Sometime you have some options, and without option you cannot use the command. Then you will not see this. I will show you that also. That means what? Now here the sub modes. First we will see the sub modes. Now the global configuration sub modes are like, there are several sub modes. That means once you are in the global configuration mode, then you can go into more sub modes to configure different things. Like interface mode. This interface mode is used to configure the details about a specific router interface. Router interface such as IP addresses, and it looks like this. That means whatever the interfaces you have, the interface which is connected to the LAN network and the interface which is connected to the WAN network. So whatever the interfaces you have in the router, they must configured with the IP addresses. So you can do this by using this, by going into this interface mode, and it looks like this: router, the name of the router, and then config hyphen if is for interface. That means you are in the interface mode. For example, to enter the interface mode, type interface and interface name in the global configuration mode. Example like this. Like this is the command to go into the interface mode. Then you will mention the name of the interface and then number of the interface. And when you press enter, you will be in the interface mode. We will see this because we will need to configure the IP address also. Then add the various parameters to that interface. So after entering into the interface mode, then you can enter the various parameters of the interface mode. Like if I want to go to the mode, so what I will do here, interface is the command, and then you will give the interface name. Now right now we are having only two interfaces, that is fast Ethernet 1 and 2. If you want to see, you can put the question mark here. Now you can see here, it will show you all the interface name. Like you can go into dialer, Ethernet, fast Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet, loopback interface, serial interface, virtual interface, a range of interface. But right now we are not having all these interfaces. We are having only these two interfaces. You can verify by checking the router. If I put my mouse here, hover my mouse there, I'm not clicking anything. You can see it is showing the port here. It is showing port, and port is what? In the first line it is saying port, and ports are fast Ethernet 0/0 and fast Ethernet 0/1. So I don't have a serial port and anything. I have only what? This fast Ethernet port. So if I go to this fast Ethernet port, and this is the number of the port, I can be in this interface mode. Exit from here, and you can press exit to exit from there. So we will see that, and we will configure also. Then the next sub mode is what? Line configuration mode. Now this line configuration mode, it is the configured details about like console, VTY and AUX, and look like this. It look like this, like config line. Now this mode is about configuring the console port and auxiliary port, the two ports which we use to configure our router. Remember, these two ports are we use to configure the router. That means these two ports we have here. We have a console port, we have this console and auxiliary port, and these two fast Ethernet ports. So these two ports are for configuring the router. So that one is to configure that router. So that mode is to configure that router. So that mode is basically to configure that router. Now what is it? To enter the line configuration mode, you can type the line command, and then you can type the name of the port. Like for console you can type console, for auxiliary you can type aux, and then number of the port in the global configuration mode, and then configure. Now lot of things for console, including what we can configure the logging and passwords. So these things we can configure into the configuration mode, like we can configure the logging in, we can configure the password for that port. And how we can go there? We can go there by giving command line and then mention the port name and then mention the port number, and then you will be enter into the line console mode. And if you want to exit it from here, then you will give exit command. Now the next sub mode is what? Router configuration mode. Now this router configuration mode is to configure the details about routing protocols. Looks like this. It looks like this, like config-router. That is why it is called router configuration mode. And it looked like this. Now this is used to configure the routing protocols. Now routing protocols we will see when we configure the routing protocols, and it will come when we configure the routing. So these are the different modes we have in a router, which is what we have: user mode, this is the first mode, then privilege mode, then global configuration mode, and in the global configuration mode we have these sub configuration modes. Some of the specific configuration mode to configure some specific interfaces, and some configuration sub modes, that is to configure some configuration in the router. And you cannot jump from user mode to configuration mode. You have to go through the privilege mode, and you can put a security password on the privilege mode to secure your configurations of the router, so that nobody can go directly in the privilege mode and configuration mode and change your router's configurations. Even you can put some password security on user mode also. Now user mode, that means logging security, like if you want to log into your router, then you have to provide your information, like you have to provide the authentication, and then you can log in into your router. Now one more thing I will show you here is that the help which you have. The help which you have, that means the help which is of the question mark. So when you give the question mark, anytime in the command line you will see the whole possibilities of the command. Log out. Okay, so the question mark is used to get the possible commands, like whenever you want to see like what command I want to see next, what command I can give next, then you can use this question mark. Another help you have here in the router iOS is the tab. In your keyboard you have a tab button. Now this tab button do what? It will auto complete the command. Remember, everyone does not have a good spelling. So if your spelling is not that good, then you can use this tab command, or even you should use this tab command so that you know that the command is right or not right. So if you're not using the right command, you will press tab and it will not complete. Now this tab means when you press tab, it will auto complete the command. For example, I want to type the enable. I want to go to the privilege mode and I want to type the enable command. So I will type en and press tab, and it completes. You can see it completes the command enable. So whenever I want to go to, or whenever I want to give any command, I don't have to give all command. I just press en and press tab. Now if suppose I press only E and press tab, now it is not completing. That means we have some other command also which starts from E. So we can press question mark here. So I have two commands, enable and exit. Now enable and exit means exit. Now if I give N, then press tab, it will complete enable, and if I give X, then it will complete execute. That means en is unique for enable. There is no other command available with en. For en, if I press question mark here, I have only one command, that is enable. So what I can do here, it is the great help here in router. You don't have to give the whole enable. You can use the en also, and it will work like a enable. Like I don't have to type the whole enable command here. I can go up to the unique one, like en is a unique for enable. So I can press enter here, and it works same like a enable. So either you press tab and complete and then enter, or you can just go with the shortcut. So you can take it like a shortcut. Like for configure, now I want to type configure, so I press con tab. Now it is not completing. Why? So let me check. Give a question mark. It says there is two commands, configure and connect. So which you want? I want conf. Now when I press tab, it completes the configure. And then when I press question mark, it says you have terminal, and there is only one command. So if I press T and tab, it completes it. Now remember, T is unique for the terminal. There is no other command starts with T. And for configure, this conf is unique. So what I can do, I can use conf space T. So instead of typing configure terminal, the whole command, I can just use conf, that is for unique for configure, and T for terminal, that is unique for terminal, and I can press enter, and it works. So this is what like a shortcut you can use, and you can use to give an option, and this is your help, this is your control. Yeah, this is your tab command, which is help for you, which auto completes the command, and even you don't have to give the complete command, you can use a shortcut of that also. And here it is saying Control Z to exit. Now exit from config mode, the whole configuration mode. That means if you are in the configuration mode, or even if you are in any sub mode of configuration, you can just press Control Z to exit from the configuration mode. And where you will go? You will go to the privilege mode. So if you are in any other mode, you can press Control Z to directly go to the privilege mode. That means if you are in any other configuration mode, let's say example, you are into the interface mode. Now I am in the interface mode of global configuration mode. If I press Ctrl Z, I directly go to the privilege mode. And if I want to exit from here, I will give disable, or if I give exit, I will go out of router, log out. So these are the modes of router we have, and that is how we can access the router, and that is how we can access the mode. So we have seen today how we can access the router and how we can go and check the modes, and we have seen also the question mark help and the tab help also. Now next we will see how we can configure these things.